All right, welcome back to Every Sport Today. The only podcast this week coming your guys' way is college basketball.
Let's go.
You know, tournament's right around the corner, man. We don't have a lot of time to talk college hoops here, so we got to crank them out while we can. We're also going to have to figure out how we're going to talk about it with me being gone for like a week. We'll have to see if we can do it in person in Colorado when I come visit.
We're going to have to.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way to be able to do it, we could do it. Nah, I was even thinking like you could do it at your place before you leave Utah, but it's a little too early.
I had this idea. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So we're going to, I for sure am going
Pepsi
to the
Center.
first round games, Pepsi Center. You are probably going to be joining us. We will see.
Yes.
And my thought process was, so you know how there's like an intermission between the games, right? You have the 2 morning games and then the 2 night games. And there's like, they have to clear everyone out of the arena to get in the fans from each session, right?
Yeah.
So here's my idea. We just record a podcast like sitting there in front of the Pepsi Center.
Dude.
And we just like pull out microphones and we just start recording.
I think that would be awesome because I feel like that would actually gain traction for the podcast too, because people will be interested in what's going on, and you got everyone there for college basketball. Well, and even maybe some Denver locals might come in, which that could be interesting.
And we could like get the perspectives of fans from both sides. You know, if there's like a huge upset, you know, if a 3 seed loses to a 14 seed while we're there, and we get the reactions. Like, imagine if we would have done that at the Loyola Chicago upset. When we went to that would have been sick.
I mean, because at the time, no one even knew what Loyola Chicago really was.
Exactly.
And then Sister Jean became like old.
Yeah, we could have gotten Sister Jean on the podcast.
That would have, dude.
That would have been funny.
See, back then you had a podcast. I didn't have a podcast.
I don't know if I was doing a podcast at that time. There's been a lot of iterations of my podcast throughout the years.
There has been.
I'm trying to think which one I would have been doing at that time. I don't even remember.
You had Slick Snicks Picks, which was...
Yeah, but that was earlier. That was high school.
And then after that, you had...
I did like...
Every...
I did Every Sport Professionally Now in high school. That turned into Slick Nick's Picks. And then I kind of kept Slick Nick's Picks a little bit after high school. And then I tried to do another interview type podcast. Like, I think that's the one that I had you and Greg Boz on. You remember that?
I do remember that, dude.
Yeah. I think I only released like 4 episodes of that podcast because I was like, the people I'm interviewing are boring. No offense to you.
It was boring, dude. Because I barely even remember that.
Well, the idea of the podcast was like hearing people's life stories. And then I was like, yeah, but the people I'm interviewing are boring as shit. Like Colin. And whatever random chick he was dating at the time. Yeah.
Oh my God,
I've had some bad podcasts in my days, man, but that one takes the cake. Colin and random girl who was recording who he was talking to at the time. Oh, that was terrible. How we learn, how we grow.
Man, Notre Dame chick. I remember Notre Dame chick.
Notre Dame chick. This is not Notre Dame chick. I do remember her, though.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. But college basketball. That's what we're doing today. We'll figure out what we're doing for the tournament and stuff like that. Maybe do a Selection Sunday recap podcast, so on and so forth. You guys will see it coming out. But today, what I wanted to do is break down kind of the conferences and talk about which teams are in, which teams we are really paying attention to. Obviously, we did kind of like contenders and pretenders last week, so there might be some overlap in teams that we're keeping an eye out for, especially after some of these week's results. I think there are some glaring results that we need to talk about. So
yeah,
kind of that'll come within the conversation. And in college basketball right now, there is only one place to start, and it is in the SEC. Okay. I'm going to read you off. So ESPN has this great kind of bubble watch thing going on where they're kind of giving a percentage chance on who's in, right? The SEC locks as of right now that they are giving to these teams, 95% chance or higher. All these teams will be in unless there's like catastrophic things that happen. Florida Gators, Tennessee Volunteers, Alabama Crimson Tide, Auburn Tigers, Texas A&M Aggies, Kentucky Wildcats, Mississippi State Bulldogs, Missouri Tigers, and Ole Miss Rebels. That is a lot of teams in the SEC who are basically guaranteed to be
Yes.
in at this point. Let me just ask you this from this standpoint. How impressed are you with the SEC and their basketball this year? And then what team stands out to you as like, not necessarily the best team, but like just the team where you're like, all right, if they play to their best ability, they will win the SEC championship.
I'm going to try to think of like an outside team that's not in like the top 3 or 4. Like I don't want to pick Auburn, Alabama, Florida, or Tennessee out of that list. Out of that list, I'll probably go with the Mizzou Tigers. I know they kind of have had a not amazing season, but I just kind of feel like they've overachieved this season.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to be this great, and they're ranked like 13 in the country right now. They're a lock to get in the tournament. I think they could be a dark horse to win the SEC tournament and potentially up their seed. I think the SEC doing this well this season is incredible. I don't think we've seen this before from the SEC. This is something we've seen from like the ACC, the Big Ten, but in basketball, not the SEC. The SEC, we've seen like really good teams come out, like Kentucky, Florida, of course. We had South Carolina one year. I remember that made it to the Final Four. But not this many teams. 13 teams that are potentially going to make the tournament.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
The SEC,
even like Mississippi State and Ole Miss, like they're both really good teams.
Yeah.
For instance, like Florida, we have Ole Miss coming up on the schedule here, and that's not a cupcake game.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
both those.
There's a lot of Florida fans that probably see that like Ole Miss is unranked and be like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll get a good win there because we have Texas A&M coming up as well.
Yeah.
But this is just one of those years. I feel like any team in the SEC is good. I mean, even Arkansas and Texas are playing right now, and they're not great. But both of those teams could pull an upset in the SEC tournament, I can see.
Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing about the SEC is that a lot of this is going to come down to the tournament. A lot of these bubble teams, we'll talk about some of these bubble teams in a second, but like you're going to be able to massively raise your stock by winning 2 games in the SEC tournament, and you're going to tank your stock if you lose to a Vanderbilt or Oklahoma if you're a team like Texas A&M, for example, right? Like there's going to be so much volatility coming out of the SEC tournament that I think it's going to be super fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to that. The one thing I was going to say on Missouri. What is that going on in the background? Is that your dogs?
That is my dog. That is my Labrador.
I was like,
she is like
hearing panting. I'm like,
no, she's doing circles right now. Penny, come here.
You're having a good time. She's doing laps.
No, she has like 2 dog beds in my room.
Yeah.
And she's like trying to get a good spot in the dog bed. So she does like, she uses her paws to like dig into the bed and then circle around. And she does it kind of aggressively sometimes.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, dogs gotta be comfortable. That's the number one priority. So I was going to say this. Looking at some of the SEC, looking at the top SEC teams, right? You have a lot of really high-powered offenses. Obviously, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Kentucky, Missouri's in that category of kind of these higher-powered offenses. And I think that's why a team like Tennessee is the most dangerous in the SEC. Because especially in a tournament-type scenario where you play good defense against teams that rely on their offense super heavily, if you play solid defense, you can win those games pretty easily, right? Like those are the type of matchups that always favor the defensive team. If they can control the pace, if they can slow it down, if they can dominate ball, if they can limit the amount of possessions that the other team has, like that's what's going to go their way. A team like that, especially in a conference tournament, usually surprises teams. So Tennessee would be the number one team that I'm looking out for on that. The other team would be Texas A&M. They play really good defense too. So those are probably the 2 best defensive teams in the SEC. I think Ole Miss might be a part of that conversation. Yeah, they're up there. I mean, Auburn plays good defense.
Ole Miss plays pretty good defense too.
Yeah, Auburn plays good defense, but they also play just incredible offense. So it's hard to be like, well, they're not as good. But the bubble side of things for the SEC. So Vanderbilt, they have them at a 78%. They feel like they're probably going to be in, even though Vanderbilt has not been great in like SEC conference play. I mean, what are they? 8 and...
I think it's one of those this year too. If you're a team from the SEC, I feel like it helps you just being in the conference.
Exactly.
With this many good teams in the conference. it gives you a little bit of an excuse, like, oh well, they have more losses than this team from the Big East, but they did play in the SEC.
Yeah,
and they played against better competition. So I feel like that's going to be a problem in the bracketology with these guys trying to pick who's going to get in.
True.
And I think some teams are probably going to get screwed that are deserving to get in, but that always happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's always up and down. Well, and there's like, and here's the three main bubble teams that we keep coming back to for the SEC, right? Or I guess there's four. There's Oklahoma, there's Texas, there's Arkansas, and then there's Georgia. Georgia kind of got themselves a little bit more into the conversation with the Florida win. Which one of those four teams do you look at and they say, hey, if they get in the playoff or if they get in the tournament, which one of them is actually the most dangerous team out of the four of them?
I'm definitely going to say Arkansas, and that's just because John Calipari.
True.
Just his experience as a coach in college basketball, his times at Memphis were great, going all the way to the national championship and losing with Derrick Rose. But anyways, Kentucky won a national championship with them. I mean, had a great legacy there. And I feel like he's building something there at Arkansas. I mean, they did go to Kentucky, Rupp Arena. And I know that's kind of like an emotional game, but he did go in there and kind of like beat Kentucky's butt.
Yeah, they did.
In that game. And I feel like Arkansas, if you give them a chance to get in the tournament, Calipari, another thing with him too, is Kentucky, they did win the national championship when they were a number one seed, but when he was coaching there was times where they were getting the tournament as like a 4 seed, and they would make deeper runs than they ever did getting it as like a 1 or 2 seed. I feel like he does better when there's not expectations against like on him to do really good. And this first year, there's not really going to be expectations. If they get in the tournament, I feel like, oh, that's really awesome. Arkansas got in the tournament, but that's not how he operates. So I feel like he could actually get them to go a little bit deeper in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree.
And he got great credit. They have a lot of transfers on that team too. It's not like a bunch of freshmen that don't have any experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I would have picked Arkansas too. Like,
I'm not picking Mike White in Georgia.
I mean, I'm not.
And that's not just because my bias against Georgia, but Mike White's not a good coach. I'll just tell you that right now.
Well, and it's
I don't trust him.
So Arkansas and Texas are obviously playing right now as we're speaking. So we do need to keep that into consideration here. That a lot of the stuff that we're talking about could just change overnight. I think this is one of those games where it's like the winner of this matchup almost solidifies their spot in the tournament. It's going to be close. Texas is kind of part of that last 4 buys, also the last 4 in conversation. Arkansas, a lot of people have as one of the last couple teams in. So it's going to be really close between these two teams. So a win against each other is going to bolster their resume massively. But I was going to give a shout out to OU because I actually really like this OU team. They play well together. They play kind of this smooth, simple style of basketball. And yet they're 4-10 in conference, which is like insane to say that a team could go 4-10 in their conference and still make the NCAA tournament. That's how crazy the SEC has been this year.
Oklahoma kind of reminds me of a team like DePaul out of the Big East.
Yeah.
Because like DePaul multiple times this season has put like a team like St. John's on the ropes. And I feel like they're a lot better than what people give them credit for. And I feel like that's kind of what Oklahoma is, like a really sneaky team that you don't really want to give them a chance to get in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, right now they're playing Kentucky. They're playing them really well, only down by 4.
Yeah. Close game. There's a lot of games going on right now that we're going to have to pay attention. That's the only problem with recording Wednesday nights for college basketball. Wednesdays is a really good college basketball night. And so we're kind of
Arkansas too. I mean, they have a 10-point cushion right now. I feel like their defense is good enough to keep that, but college basketball, anything can happen. When we saw yesterday,
exactly,
Florida was down 26 and like marched back. They still lost, but I mean, they almost came all the way back.
Well, the Oregon upset too over Wisconsin. They came back from, I think it was 20 plus down. That was insane.
That's a bad look for Wisconsin.
Oh, it is. We'll get to Wisconsin. Let me ask you this, because there were some matchups this week kind of stood out. What matchups stood out to you this past week from the SEC, and looking at it being like, all right, we learned a little bit more about this team, and we didn't like. Just what's a game that you wanted to highlight this week from the SEC that you kind of had a couple takeaways from?
I mean, kind of the biggest one, Texas A&M, Tennessee.
Yep.
Like you said, Tennessee's defense and the way they slow down the game is really important. And I mean, Texas A&M plays great defense too. but Buzz Williams, I just don't. I said this last podcast. I don't trust him in the tournament, man. And that Tennessee game just kind of flashed it for me again. Whenever they get in a close game against a really good team, and Buzz Williams is the coach, they don't win.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a few instances where they do, but like getting into crunch time, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
I don't feel like Texas A&M is going to get in the tournament and really do anything, like severely damage. I think they can get to like the round of 32. But that game kind of told me everything I already knew.
Yeah. That Tennessee is just superior in every way.
that Tennessee can, in crunch time, win a big game like that. And I trust Rick Barnes.
Yeah, exactly. Let me talk about Alabama, Kentucky for a second, because once again, this is I don't know what to think about Kentucky game. And obviously, Alabama does what Alabama does, puts up 96 points, wins a game by 13 points, and they're just unstoppable offensively. But I look at the Kentucky side of things, and I'm like, all right, you guys should be doing more offensively. Like, where does your offense flow? I don't feel like your offense flows at all. So,
no.
Yeah, combining on my thoughts last week on Kentucky, it's just I don't understand this team. And teams that I don't understand, I don't like in the NCAA tournament. So, keep an eye out, upset watch for Kentucky.
That's what Kentucky with me is a lot of times. I think I said it in the last podcast. I feel like they're playing like blacktop basketball is because they don't really have that much chemistry together. I know it's Mark Pope's first year and like he just kind of put the whole roster together, but it's going to take more time, man. I don't see them really doing anything in this first year at his tender.
Exactly. I agree. All right, let's move over to the Big Ten. Probably the next best conference.
The Big Ten.
There's a few teams that feel like they're guaranteed at this point. Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Oregon, Purdue, Maryland, UCLA all feel like they're guaranteed. Illinois is most likely to be in. I don't think anyone's really counting them out at this point. Like I said, it's one of those things where they'd have to basically like lose every game and then lose first round of the tournament to not get in at this point. So they feel pretty safe on there. What of those teams stands out to you in saying, hey, like they're, once again, if everything clicks, they're going to win the Big Ten tournament and then they're going to be dangerous in the NCAA tournament?
I think I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. I think it's the Maryland Terps, man. Yeah. They had a tough loss against Michigan State tonight. Michigan State kind of plays the same game as them, and it was at home. I feel like that's going to be a wake-up call for them, though.
I mean, should we talk about that finish? More than half-court buzzer beater. We are officially in March, ladies and gentlemen. I know my clock says February 26th, and this is coming out on February 27th, but it is officially March. We had our first incredible buzzer beater by Michigan State. It was amazing.
And I was so happy. I'm still picking Maryland. I feel like Kevin Willard has done a great job there. The crowd was completely packed in the stadium there in Maryland, and that doesn't really happen because College Park is not a town. It's more of like a commuter school where you don't have a bunch of these fans there that are like diehard Maryland Terps fans. Yeah. And I know this because I've visited my sister up there a few times, and that's what I noticed about their culture. And it's kind of like St. John's. They're a commuter school too. And they need a lot of like outside fans to drive in to come to games. And that's what you're seeing there at Maryland is they've built a culture and the fans are coming around it. The players are believing in it. And I feel like everything's coming together at the right time. The reason I still give them credit is like you said, it's a half-court buzzer beater by Michigan State. I just feel like they have a lot of good like juju going in the tournament where they could actually make some noise. And it's going to be one of those Big Ten teams where people are like, oh, Maryland. How about Maryland?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be one of the big dogs out of the Big Ten. I don't think it's going to be Michigan State. Michigan doesn't score
Michigan doesn't
easily.
Score enough. Yeah.
No, they don't. They play good defense, but that's not going to be good enough. Wisconsin's kind of the same way for me, where Wisconsin, if they're not hitting their shots, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
For them. They play Purdue's the same way too. Purdue lost earlier this week. I picked Purdue last week. I was all really high on Purdue. I'm really not anymore. I don't know why I picked them. They live and die by the three, man.
Yeah, they live and die by the three, and that's
and they
not
don't.
A recipe
and they have good 3-point shooters, but they're not Steph Curry's. I mean, they're not going to win the tournament. They're not going to win the Big Ten tournament. They're not going to go all the way in the NCAA tournament.
I think
last
the Big
year
Ten's
was,
funny.
I think the Big Ten's funny because it's like
you have kind of the same disparity that the SEC has, where it's like really good defensive team, not as great offensively, really great offensive team, not as good defensively. And they have this dichotomy about them. Both conferences kind of have the same thing. But like Michigan State's really good defensively, but they are not Tennessee level defensively. No. And I think Tennessee's probably just better offensively than them. And so it's going to be a question of like, can these teams who are really good defensively, let's say Michigan State makes it to an Elite Eight, if they're a 2 seed and they have to play in Alabama, who's a 1 seed, you get probably the best defense in the Big Ten versus the best offense in probably the country. I think that's safe to say, not even just the SEC. So it's like, can the Big Ten actually compete with these SEC teams? I don't know. That being said, I think Michigan State's the best team in the Big Ten. I still think so. I think they're able to just win and grind them out and get the job done when they need to. The thing about Michigan State that's been really impressive is they've won really difficult road games. Obviously, the win against Maryland. Exactly. Obviously, the Maryland game. They beat Michigan on the road the other day. They beat Purdue. Obviously, that was at home. But their last 3 wins are Purdue, Michigan, Maryland. And now they play Wisconsin on Saturday. If Michigan State can take care of business and beat Wisconsin and beat Michigan the last game of the year, both at home, they are by far the favorite in the Big Ten. And I think they might be one of the favorites to win the entire thing. Because you get Tom Izzo in March, you get him in a good seed, odds are he's going to take you somewhere. I know people are skeptical of them. I mean, they rattled off a shit ton of wins in a row, and then they lost at USC, at UCLA, which, funny enough, I think this is actually a point that we brought up on the college side. You know, you got a team like Michigan State who's not used to traveling that far. So they have to travel to USC and UCLA. It completely throws off their schedule. They lose both those games, and then they come back and they're fine. Like, I think people are overrating those 2 losses because those aren't 2 good Big Ten teams. But I think they're underrating the fact that, hey, you have to travel across the country for those. That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. Probably threw them off. Yeah.
I think one of the misconceptions that we've heard from a lot of different media members, not including ourselves.
Not including us in the media, obviously. We're not.
Is about...
We are in the media, but we're not a part of the media,
The big media.
Exactly.
You know, big J journalism.
We have the media. We're like more, down-to-earth media members. Yeah. We're closer to...
like teams...
Go ahead.
These teams from like these winter wonderland places in the Big Ten, like Michigan State, Michigan, that have to fly to like Los Angeles. I'm not going to say his name, but there's a California journalist that I listen to quite frequently that was talking about teams going to Los Angeles. And he's like, ooh, got to go to sunny Los Angeles and play USC or UCLA. Give me a break, folks.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to go. And I'm like, no, dude, the time change. If you're playing at the University of Michigan, you're playing on East Coast time.
Exactly.
That's where the time zone like cuts off right there. You got to fly all the way to California, change your whole schedule, and then you're playing sometimes a late night game out there.
Yeah.
Like 8 p.m., 8:30 tip-off time. You're in bed by that time usually.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're playing indoors. It doesn't really matter. So, like, them talking about, like, oh, it's so nice sunny weather out there. It's like, when those teams travel out there, they're just staying at their team hotel. They're going right to the stadium, doing team warm-ups, playing. It's a lot on them. And if you're in school, too, and your due date's like 11:59 Eastern time, and you're trying to get that turned in, and you're like on the West Coast.
That's not fun. Yeah.
It's only like 7 p.m.
Yeah, you're trying to crank out an essay right after
and you're trying to get ready
ends.
for a game. Yeah, and you're used to like maybe getting out of a game and turning something in.
Well, and you see that a plane flipped over because of the snow. Or I guess that's what they're saying that it's because of. Yeah. And so you're like, well, now we got to fly back. So we're probably getting a plane crash. Like, you probably got that in the back of your mind at this point.
Well, yeah. You have issues going on right now with planes. So it's another like security issue too. Is, I mean, yeah, we have really great technology, but you just never know, man. So it's so a dangerous issue too.
Yeah.
Those are long flights, man. I mean, if you're playing at Penn State or Rutgers too.
True.
Those are probably the longest distances. You're playing all the way in the Northeast, and you're flying across the country. That's legit.
Yeah, that's gotta suck.
Completely diagonal across the country.
Yeah, that's gotta really suck, actually.
But so I don't just feel bad for the West Coast teams like Oregon, USC,
Washington,
all of them.
That is why Oregon and UCLA have been so impressive this year, because they are having to deal with that really tough travel. But at some point, you probably get a little bit more used to it, and you have a more of a home court advantage, right? So,
well, I feel like teams need to integrate the time traveling, and they probably already have.
True.
I'm probably just talking to my butt right now, but like maybe integrating like your film study for like these long plane rides, or like integrating like, I don't know, just certain activities you can do on the planes or in the airports to get ready for the game. Instead of just like having your guys like play around on their phones or watch Cobra Kai on Netflix or something. Like, you know?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. You're 100%
maybe do the Russell Wilson technique when you're flying to Europe. You know? Do high knees up and down the aisle and like yoga.
Hey, that's Russell Wilson. Russell Westbrook's on our team. Oh, you said Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I was about to defend Russ Westbrook for a second. He's a nugget. We love him now.
I think everyone knows Russell Wilson's famous plane ride to London.
Yes, that is true.
For the Broncos a couple years ago.
Any of these bubble teams stand out to you as a potential upset candidate? Ohio State obviously kind of leads the way. Nebraska is in the last four right now. Indiana is on the way out. Northwestern seems like they don't have a shot, but people are still considering them. So any of these teams stand out to you from a bubble watch potential, who's a team that's going to get in as an 11 seed that could maybe upset a 6 seed?
I'm going to go with actually Nebraska.
Yeah.
Kind of like a curveball in there.
No, they're good.
This is a team, I mean, the other day they're playing Michigan. They're playing right with them the whole time. They play good defense. They just don't really score.
Yeah.
I feel like if they play a good enough defensive game and they pull a team like I'm just going to throw Texas A&M out there, like they meet them in the actual NCAA tournament or something.
Yeah.
And they kind of slow the game down too much. And Texas A&M is one of those teams where I feel like if they get cold, it's like in the NCAA when you have like that cold spiel above your quarterback's head, you start playing really badly. I feel like Nebraska could get a team into that and kind of turn it into a nightmare situation for the other team where Nebraska ends up like sneaking out with a win.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think Ohio State is going to get in the tournament.
So Ohio State plays at USC tonight. Kind of one of those things that we were talking about. They just lost at UCLA. Now they have to play at USC. Kind of what we were just talking about. I'm going to actually be watching that game tonight because I think this Ohio State team is like consistent, but they're just consistently like just so mid. Like I like teams that have a little bit more consistency, but they are just consistently just so mediocre that I'm never impressed by anything they do. Their last 3 games at the end of the year, though, are at USC, Nebraska at home, and then at Indiana. So the last 2 games against other bubble teams are going to be super important for all those teams. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye out for. And then if they could somehow get a good draw, win the first round, we'll see. I mean, they're in right now.
Ohio State is kind of like, well, you said they're mid. They're kind of like Sonic's food. You know, because like...
No, Sonic's food is like terrible.
People like throw out Sonic like they're like Blast and, you know, they're cool drinks and stuff like that. But their food is like, to me, it's consistent. It's always consistently a like 2.5 out of 5 stars. It's like, it's not good. It's not like bad. It's just food. And I feel like Ohio State is kind of like, they're just a basketball team where like they win half the games, they lose half the games. And you don't really expect much from them. And they're not going to achieve expectations. They're not going to go below it. They're just going to stay right there. They're like right at a 70%.
I get what you're saying.
I don't think that's a recipe for success for them.
I get what you're saying, but Sonic is so below mid, you are just delusional. So the Sonic food, Sonic drinks are fine. Sonic drinks actually bring it up to where it's mid, but the Sonic food is just like disgustingly terrible. Disgusting. You're so wrong on this.
I love a Sonic.
I'm
not going to say I love. Never mind. But it's mid, but I do get it every once in a while. It's a chili cheese dog from Sonic.
Worse than mid. All right, let's talk about the Big 12 a little bit. Locks in this conference: Houston, Iowa State, Texas Tech. Wreck 'em.
Yeah.
Arizona Wildcats. Yeah, exactly. Arizona Wildcats and the Kansas Jayhawks. BYU feels like they're in, especially after that Kansas win. Baylor feels like they're in, but they could be another team that still slips up. But those teams should be in. Which of those teams really stands out to you? talk about.
I'm going to go with
winning the Big 12.
Winning the Big 12. I'm going to go. Man, I can't pick anyone besides Houston, man.
Yeah, it's kind of feeling that
Kevin
way.
Sampson plays. He gets the team to play way too good at defense, where I can't pick against him because Texas Tech is the only team I feel like that could actually like score against Houston.
Yeah.
And the other day they kind of bottled them up. Now, give or take, Texas Tech does have like two of their top scorers out. So does Iowa State, which is the big problem with Iowa State right now.
Yeah.
Is two of their top scorers are out. So Houston right now kind of has an easy path to win the Big 12 tournament. I don't like BYU's a great team. They really are.
I love BYU.
They're not an amazing team.
No.
They can't break through Houston's defense. I don't see it happening. I don't see Kansas doing it either. I kind of see them just kind of smooth sailing through the Big 12. And this is the Big 12 where the start of the season, I think a lot of people thought they probably could be the best basketball conference.
Yeah.
They really could be.
Here's the thing about Houston. It's like you said, it's hard to pick anyone but Houston. And I'm going to give a shout out to another team, but I'm picking Houston to win the Big 12 because not only is their defense just so high level. I mean, they're the best defensive team in the country. It's not particularly close, but their offensive efficiency has become so seamless and so smooth that they have just become a entirely different team than we've ever seen in college basketball. Like, they were this way last year, but their offense wasn't as efficient. Their offense was still good. Obviously, guys like Sasser, you have really good offensive options there. But this year, they've just taken it up a notch, and it's such a high level of basketball that watching Houston play, you're just like, wow, this team knows what they're doing. And they've got guys who step up, and they've got LJ Cryer might be one of the best guards in the country. It might just be because he's on Houston. Like Sasser was one of the best guards in the country, maybe just because he was playing for Houston, even though he's been a good NBA asset actually. But Cryer has just been incredible at filling that role, where it's like, hey, our guards are relentlessly pressuring you. You're not going to get by us. We're going to play incredible defense, and then we're going to make shots when we need to. And that's the efficiency side of their offense that we just haven't seen before. So they're taking their game that they perfected and do so well to an entirely new level this year. And that's why they've been so incredible.
Why I really like LJ Cryer is this is a guy that played at Baylor for 3 years. He's from Katy, Texas. He's a Houston-grown kid.
Yeah.
And does his senior year, comes to Houston last year, plays there as well, but he comes back this year. And he's like doing his senior year here at Houston. And you don't necessarily have to have this as a college basketball team. It's kind of hard to in the NIL days, but
yeah,
having one of those guys from your area is really big to me because I feel like he's playing for something bigger than himself, kind of playing for the city of Houston, for his legacy there in Houston. A lot of the games I've noticed, he's got huge crowds of people.
He does, yes.
It's like family, friends there at the games, and I feel like, I mean, they're definitely probably going to get a number one seed. I think they're going to steal it from Florida.
Yeah.
After Florida's loss yesterday, and especially the way Houston's playing. So they're going to end up playing in a good region where their fans are going to be able to show up to games. And we both know this living in Texas. Houston's alumni base isn't as big as like the other schools there in Texas, but it's still there.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's one of those fan bases, kind of like an SMU, where the fan base doesn't come out of the woodworks unless they start doing really good.
Yeah.
And this is like Houston's thing. And it has been for the past few seasons is college basketball. That's what they're getting known as, like a college basketball school because of Kevin Sampson.
Yeah, because the way that Sampson has set up this program is beautiful, and it's amazing to see. Wichita, Kansas, he's going to be their closest location, so that's not super close, but they'll still travel. They'll be fine. The other thing I was going to say.
Okay, never mind. That kind of worries me because the thing we also know about Texas people is I'd say about 50% of them don't ever really leave the state.
Yeah, they do hate leaving Texas.
They're scared to leave the state. So
especially the Houston ones, because they're so far south, they like the furthest north that they'll go is Dallas, right?
Yeah,
that's just how it works.
Okay, they got us screwed over.
Yeah,
teams from the south with that, man.
Real quick,
Wichita, Kansas is where their region's going to be?
Yeah, that's their closest one. The other ones around there are Lexington and Raleigh. Those are the only other ones that are close to them, but Wichita will be the closest. So, yeah, they'll pretty much end up there for sure. Houston's 4 losses this year. They lost by 5 to Auburn, number 1 team in the country. They lost to 5 by Alabama, the best offense in the country. They lost by 3 to San Diego State, a bubble team that's like a terrible offense, but good defensively. I don't know. That's kind of a weird one that you throw out. And then a 1-point loss to Texas Tech. So those are 3 losses to really high-powered offenses. So how much can they control those high-powered offenses? We'll have to see. We'll have to see if they have to match up with a super high-powered offensive team like an Alabama or something like that in the tournament. So we'll see how that plays out for them.
What Houston reminds me of, because we could do a college football podcast.
We do college football. Ohio State,
not current Clemson, but like Clemson from like 2017 to 2021. They were one of the only teams outside of the SEC where people like had confidence in with them playing an SEC team where it's like, no, they can match up against them. They're the only team out of the Big 12, Houston, that I could see actually matching up with an SEC team. Texas Tech and Iowa State, I could see them scoring enough with an SEC team, but not able to pull away at the end, just due to their lack of defense and just talent-wise compared to the SEC.
Very true.
Where I could see Houston actually taking on and beating a lot of the SEC teams.
Yeah, I agree. All right, bubble teams in the Big 12. There's not really – I mean, we talked about, like, BYU Baylor should be in. Like we said, West Virginia is kind of the only bubble team. They're a last 4 buys team right now. And then it's looking like Cincinnati's just on the way out. So I don't know how much we need to talk about these bubble teams. I do really like Baylor, though. I think VJ is one of the best players in the country. I think VJ should probably actually be the 2nd overall pick in the draft above the Rutgers guys behind Cooper Flagg. He's incredible. I would not be shocked if VJ has a Kemba Walker-esque tournament run. So he's just that type of player. He's just that good.
For me, West Virginia, the reason I don't think they're going to get in is they've kind of just lost their culture identity from a few years ago when Hudgens kind of got pushed out.
Press Virginia.
And I mean, rightly so he did, but I don't want to bring up like his stuff, but he was a great like basketball coach, like his culture.
He was.
They were Press Virginia, man.
Press Virginia.
They were known for playing incredible defense. They hustled the entire game. They had great conditioning, and I don't see that anymore.
Agreed. All right. A few conferences left. The ACC kind of sucks this year, so we'll kind of breeze through. Duke, Clemson, Louisville are really the only locks. They have 3 teams that are guaranteed to get in, and then you got SMU, Wake Forest, and UNC just kind of sitting there lingering, and we'll have to see what happens in the tournament. I was going to throw this at you because I did see these numbers earlier today. So 2 teams in the ACC, right? Pretty simple. One of them is 20-7 with a 39 net rating. One of them 17-11 with a 45 net rating. SMU is the team that is 20-7 with 39 with the higher net rating, and UNC is the 17-11 team with the 45. I definitely think there's probably going to be a little bit, tournament selection bias going on. But both those guys, but both those teams are teams that are on the first 4 out right now, according to Lunardi. Real quick, when we talk about bracketology stuff, most of the time we're talking about ESPN bracketology. So shout out Lunardi. I do love me some Joe Lunardi. That dude. We've
grown up with Joe Lunardi.
Yes.
Dickie V's come back to ESPN. He just announced his game, so we grew up with him as well.
That's who we know.
Jay Billis.
Jay Billis is all we know for college basketball, man.
Yeah.
That's all we know. Jay Will doing the half-court shot bullshit and then ripping his suit open and revealing a jersey, which he has only been doing for like 3 years now, and it's kind of cringe and nobody pays attention.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
Shout out Jay Will for trying, though.
You're not Lee Corso.
Yes, you're not him, bud. Anyway,
I'm not high on SMU or UNC. SMU for me, what's their big win this season? They don't have one.
Well, they lost to Duke or the one time that they played.
They got massacred by Duke. It wasn't just like a normal loss. But Duke does that to teams. Duke did it the other day to Miami too.
Yeah.
But
they did put up 117 points against Miami.
They don't have a win against Clemson.
Yep. They lost to Clemson the one time they played. They lost to Louisville the one time they played. There are too many teams in the ACC. Why are these teams only playing each other once? Can we abolish the ACC as a basketball conference and the football conference?
The ACC is probably the strangest conference to me right now in sports, just the way their teams are laid out.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It does. I don't understand what the conference is. There's so many teams in this conference. Their conference tournament's going to take fucking an entire week.
Is it going to be in North Carolina again in Greensboro?
Probably. I'm curious what the structure of this tournament is. Give me a team that you're give me a team that you're actually paying attention to in the ACC. Is there any ACC team that you're actually paying attention to?
Besides Duke?
Yeah, probably besides Duke.
I'm not really paying attention that much to Louisville.
Yeah.
The reason I'm paying attention to Clemson is I feel like they can score well enough to make it through the tournament. Their defense isn't great, but they play enough defense against good teams where I feel like they could maybe make it to the Sweet 16. I feel like they're going to run into a wall, though, if they play like a Tennessee or an Alabama, where they're just not going to be able to match up against them men.
Okay, here's how the ACC tournament works. So the bottom 3 teams just don't even make the tournament. They don't even make the conference tournament, which is wild. I don't know how you have a conference.
In the tournament, in the conference where the whole story of NC State.
Yes. And currently,
the last team to get in.
Yes, and currently NC State is a team that doesn't qualify and is not going to be in the ACC tournament. Because there are 18 teams in the ACC tournament, and they only allow 15.
Just cancel the Jimmy V Foundation, then. What?
All right, so here's how the tournament works, okay? Here's how the tournament works.
No, they need to know. That is, if I'm a North Carolina State Wolfpack, I need to boycott my way into that tournament. That is ridiculous.
Yes, I agree. So, yeah, 3 teams don't make it. As of right now, it would be Miami, NC State, and Boston College. Miami's already out. They're already guaranteed to be
Boston
out.
Boston College. Do you remember, 10 years ago, there was that center. They went 0 something in conference play.
Oh, yeah.
And they're asking him, his favorite memory, and he's like, going out to eat. That's Boston College basketball for you there.
Okay, this is a 5-day. This is a 5-day tournament. There are games for 5 straight days in the ACC tournament. So the 10 and 15 seeds will play each other. The 12 and 13 seeds will play each other. The 11 and 14 seeds will play each other. So that means the 9 seeds and up get a first round bye. In the second round, the 8 plays the 9, the 5 plays whoever wins, the 7 plays whoever wins, the 6 plays whoever wins. So the 1 through 4 seed get 2 byes. They get 2 byes in the conference tournament. They go straight to the quarterfinals, which isn't that crazy. But the fact that there are 18 teams in the conference and they only bring 15 of them, and then you give byes to 1 through 4 all the way to the quarterfinals, this conference is a joke at this point. This conference is stupid. We need to abolish the conference, especially after
the
SMU.
Conference, it's just in general, the conference makes absolutely no sense geographically. You have a team from Texas in there. You have Cal and Stanford on the Pacific Coast playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You have teams way up in Boston, and then you have a team all the way down in Miami that's playing for you. And then you have a team like West Virginia that's not in the conference that should probably be in the ACC.
Yeah.
But they're not. Someone's got to fix this, man. I feel like we need not just everyone's been talking about we need a commissioner for college football. I just think we need a commissioner for a lot of these college sports now.
Yeah, exactly.
To fix a lot of this, man.
Exactly. All right, ACC teams outside of Duke, Louisville, Clemson are probably the only ones even worth mentioning. I think SMU is probably a better team than people are giving them credit for.
Wake Forest
is they play good defense. I don't know if they'll make the tournament though. They're last 4 in right now.
I think they're going to make the tournament, but
I think the ACC tournament's going to be super fascinating because you might have a team like Wake Forest who makes it to the semifinals, and they might have only played Cal and what other mediocre ACC teams are there? Notre Dame and Pitt. They could have just
Tech.
Yeah, like they could have just played terrible teams and then make the ACC semifinals, and then people be like, "Wow, they made the ACC semifinals. They deserve to be in the playoff." So,
I mean, Georgia Tech, who's playing point guard for them? Hayes King? No, I'm just kidding.
That was a good one. All right. Big East is a little bit more interesting. You got the Johnnies that we talked about last week, Marquette, Creighton, UConn. UConn should still be in, even though they're kind of weird and mediocre. And then you got Xavier, Villanova, kind of on the way out, looking in, possibly, maybe. I doubt they're in. But any teams from the Big East really standing out to you?
I think I said it earlier. It's DePaul.
Yeah.
For me, I think DePaul is a sneaky good team there in that conference where it's not a great conference right now, the Big East. But whenever they play good teams, they play up to their competition. But another thing about them is when they play bad teams, I feel like they play down to their competition.
Are you talking about DePaul, the 2-15 team in the conference?
Yeah. Dude, yeah. They're not going to make the tournament, but I still am like, I like them in the Big East, dude. They're one of those teams that's like, you can't ever count them out.
Listen, if they win the tournament, they're in, man. You never know.
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's a conference right there where I could see someone from like the very bottom flying through the tournament and winning the whole thing.
I think
because like St. John's should win the tournament. Like they're the best team in the conference. They have the best players. They have the best coach. They should win the tournament, right? But I don't know if you've heard Rick Pitino talk this year about the Big East.
Yeah,
he's scared. He's scared for the Big East tournament, and he's talked about a team like DePaul. So he's like, every time we play DePaul, they're a good basketball. They could win this conference.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The Big East, I think it's 3 teams, and then UConn's kind of on the outside looking in. St. John's worries me because they're 17-0 at home, so they've just dominated their home games, which a lot of these really good college basketball teams do, so good for them. However, well, actually, I think the Big East tournament is played in New York. Oh, they'll be fine then.
Yeah.
Might be just right in their backyard at that point. But yeah, I think like the thing about a team like, Providence, Seton Hall, DePaul, they're just kind of like bottom feeder Big East teams. Although the Big East is very up for grabs, when you have a team like St. John's who has Rick Pitino and his experience there, and you have a team like Creighton who's got Kalkbrenner, they got experience, like UConn, obviously back-to-back national champions. Like you have too many teams that have experience in big situations that I don't feel like we're going to see a big upset in the Big East tournament like that.
You don't think so?
No.
I don't know. I'll put my money on a big. I'll put my money on a big upset in the Big East tournament.
I think if you get the right draw, it's a possibility. Like if you get UConn in the first round, and you're like, well, UConn's kind of sliding. Like they're kind of garbage right now. We could beat them. I think that's a possibility. But if you have to play one of those top 3 teams, I think it's a little bit tougher. So. Big East, yeah, they'll be interesting. Xavier, Villanova, they're bubble teams that we'll have to keep an eye out for. So,
I mean, realistically though, out of the Big East besides St. John's, probably Marquette.
Yeah, I mean it's Marquette, Creighton, and St. John's. I have a soft spot for Creighton for some reason. I really like Kalkbrenner, so I always think that they could do potentially great things, and they never seem to do it. So maybe I need to write them off. Anyways.
Do you think it's like that Nebraska air that blows in to northern Colorado?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of gets you.
Yeah. It's 100% what it is. Any mid-major teams that stand out to you? Obviously, St. Mary's, Memphis, Utah State feels like guarantees at this point. New Mexico also feels like a guarantee. Some of these Mountain West schools. The only other Mountain West school that's kind of in consideration is, San Diego State and then Boise State are both in consideration. I think those are teams that they'll be interesting to see how they play itself out. But any of these mid-major teams kind of standing out to you as like, if they get in, they're going to make a deep run.
I don't think they'd make a deep run, but I'm going to shout out Denton, Texas with North Texas.
Yeah, UNT, baby.
They're a team where I feel like they're actually a mid-major team that plays defense.
True.
Like consistently the whole game. They hustle really well too. They don't have any like really huge wins, but that's not really to their discredit. They don't have any like big teams on their schedule.
Yeah.
They play who they play. They mostly win. I mean, they're second right now in the American Conference. I feel like they could maybe make some noise. I don't think Memphis is like a juggernaut.
No,
they're a great team. They're definitely the best team right now in the conference. But I think UNT could maybe sneak through, win that conference, and get in the tournament and make some noise. It's one of those teams on a bracket. I'm probably going to pick UNT in the first round.
Yeah,
depending on who they play.
I hope they get in. They would probably have to win the conference. Just looking at how the things are shaping out, because the American, it's kind of hard for them to get two at-large bids, but I'd hope they get in.
I think they could get enough wins in the tournament to kind of make a name for themselves.
Yeah, if they win out and then lose to Memphis in the conference championship, it's a possibility.
I don't know if it's going to be like, because last year the Mountain West got a good amount of teams in.
Yeah,
where teams like conferences like the Big East were complaining.
Yeah, we also sucked, so we probably didn't deserve it. I say we as a fan of a Mountain West Conference team. Like, that's the thing too, is like New Mexico plays so fast, but they are so inefficient. Like, they are basically the opposite of they are what's the term? I don't even know. They're just like weird Alabama, where they're not as good, they're not as talented, but they play fast and they are terrible efficiency wise. And so everyone always falls in love with them for an upset pick, because it's like, wow, they could drop 110 on you, but they're never going to do that because they just aren't efficient enough. So I don't know. Mountain West is weird this year. I do think Utah State's a good team though. According to Joe Lunardi's bracketology right now, I did see this. One of the 8-9 matchups is BYU versus Utah State, which would be fucking electric here in Utah. That would be awesome.
Whoa. Hide your Coke Zeros, guys.
Bro, the fans would be out. They would travel to Lexington for that, you know? I'm going to do this weekly.
Wait, they're gonna go to Lexington? Do you think Mark Pope would just like show up to the game and like?
Yeah, no, BYU fans they'll travel to Lexington for a little basketball, you know.
Yeah,
especially if it's against the in-state rival Utah State, you know, they're gonna be up for that one. The one thing, so I want to do this to end the podcast. I want to map out what the potential Denver matchups could be. Okay, so where it's shaping out right now, it really looks like we're going to get a 3 seed or 4 seed, right? A lot of these top tier teams, they're going to have closer locations to them, so they're going to be put there. Then it becomes a matter of which teams are going to be closer to us at that point. And it's starting to feel like if Texas Tech falls into a 3 or 4 seed, they're pretty much locked to go to Denver, because that'll be the next closest place to them. Because
they're gonna get a Texas Tech Letterman jacket.
That'd be sick. Yeah, because some of these other places are like Seattle, Providence. Like, those are not closer than Denver to Texas Tech. So if all of these closer places like Wichita get filled and Texas Tech falls into that 3 or 4, it's feeling like they're going to be there. The other team that feels like they could be there is Arizona, but Arizona also has no, we're closer than Seattle is for them. So yeah, they would. Yeah. It's feeling like if those two teams end up as 3 and 4 seeds, we're probably getting them. But there are some teams that could kind of jump into that space, that 3 or 4 range, where we're going to be getting them. But
that just gives me flashbacks, bro, to number 3 seed Texas Tech against 14 seed Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, that was lit.
In Dallas.
That was a good game, too. SFA held in. And so, yeah, the matchups right now, they're predicting Oregon versus Drake as a 5-12 matchup, which everybody in their mother would pick Drake in their bracket. Like, that would be the upset pick of the century. And then Akron versus Arizona. And then on the other side, 6 seed would be St. Mary's versus Texas. I think a Texas getting into the playoff would be interesting. And then Texas Tech versus Utah Valley University as the 14th seed. That's right, UVU, baby. If it's UVU versus Texas Tech, I'm going down the street to the UVU gift shop, whatever you want to call it, and getting gear, and I'm going to be annoying as shit to you.
Dude,
that'd be awesome.
You're gonna be outnumbered, man. This could be Texas Tech, man. They're gonna travel.
I think it'll be interesting.
Travel Denver,
but
there's a good fan base here, Texas Tech wise. I mean, it's not huge, but there's a good alumni base here in Colorado.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, I think those matchups would be fun, and I also think that not a lot of fans are going to travel for them, so tickets should drop in price pretty soon. So hopefully we could get cheap tickets when that gets announced. We'll see, though. All right, that's pretty much it for college basketball. Anything else before we go? I think that's it.
I'm just kind of pissed at Florida.
Yeah, that was a bad loss.
Right now, I thought we locked up a number 1 seed, and we still have a chance to get the number 1 seed.
Yeah,
we have to probably win the tournament.
If they make like the championship game, I guess it depends on what everyone else does. I don't know.
Mad about losing to Mike White, bro.
Yeah, it's bad loss.
That guy. I don't have enough bad things to say about the guy. All right, does a terrible job at Florida. He takes over for Billy Donovan, runs us into the gutter. Right, every year is supposed to be the come up for Mike White. Never happens, right? And then he leaves in the middle of the night, takes a job at Georgia. We beat him 6 straight times. And he finally beats us.
Yeah,
one time.
You got you.
And it's for Georgia to maybe make the tournament. So it's one of those rivalry things. I hate Georgia with all my heart, and so it was a painful loss for sure.
Yeah, of course, any rivalry loss is a bad loss.
Yeah.
All right, next week we will be back. It'll be Wednesday, so we'll probably just preview kind of the last week of the season, and then the week after that we'll be previewing conference tournaments, and then it'll be Selection Sunday. So only a couple more weeks before the tournament starts. So we got to get you all ready.
We're about to be in the best time of the year. I mean, the Masters is coming up too.
True.
The best tennis tournaments are coming up here in the spring and early summer.
Yep.
To me, huge football fan. I love the fall. I gotta say, I think the spring is like my favorite time of the year. That spring going into early summer. It's just awesome.
Yeah. There's just so much going on.
NBA playoffs pick up too.
Yeah. So much going on.
MLB starts up the season.
Exactly.
I'm upset about that. We got to plan for next year, man. Do a spring training trip, dude.
Well, I'm going out to Arizona in 2 weeks, so I'm going to a spring training game.
Yeah, but you're not going with an actual player like Colin Williamson, who's on the team.
Fair. Yeah, he is on the team.
Like we did last time.
God damn it. I hate that.
We got to actually go with a Texas Rangers guy who was on the spring training team.
We met
him at the hot tub.
I love Bits more than any other person in this world. That is my least favorite bit of all time, and it's not particularly close.
I'm on the team, bro.
I'm on the team. I hate that bit so much. We'll have to share that story someday. Yeah, I hate that bit so much. Real quick, as we end the podcast, I do want to give a shout out. NBA Centel is officially dead. Arguably the GOAT Twitter at the NBA Twitter account.
What? What do you mean it's dead?
Centel has been taken down. Twitter has removed Centel. No more getting Colin Cowherd. No more getting Stephen A. Centel has been removed. It's a sad day for sports fans everywhere. Arguably the GOAT. Arguably the GOAT account.
Me a lot of times.
Well, yeah, you're also the most gullible person I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, it's got me good a couple times.
You're NBA Centel's target audience. We'll miss Centel.
I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah,
there was some fun times, man.
It's the best.
DMing some of my friends the Centel post. I'm getting a reply back in the morning.
You're like, bro,
I'm looking and I'm like, or I quote retweet it.
Oh my god. We're gonna miss Centel, man. He'll be back. He'll figure something out.
It's guys. It's worse than a walk of shame.
It is.
It's bad, guys.
Yeah. When you send a Centel tweet to a buddy, it's a pretty bad look. It's a pretty bad look. But we're still gonna miss him.
It's the shame on once, shame twice. I did it 3 times, guys. It's probably more than that. Sorry, George Bush. Your quote was great, but I didn't fall through.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Barkwell, for doing this. Thank you, NBA Centel, for
yes, sir,
being this incredible media source that you are. We'll miss you. R.I.P. Centel. We'll catch you guys later.
All right.